A name we have not discussed but will today, Joey Bosa.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's good, everybody? Matt Derry with you on a Friday edition of Locked On Lions right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today is Friday, February 21st, into a weekend, and Saturday, February 22nd. Thanks for making us your first listen and checking us out wherever you get your podcast. Thank you to those of you that watch and subscribe daily on our Locked On Lions YouTube channel. And of course, our everydayers that are out there that watch and listen to the program daily. That includes my girl, Lori Impellizzeri in Grand Rapids. Appreciate you, Lori, for always checking out the program. Joey Bosa could be let go by the LA Chargers because he makes too much money and he's never healthy. Could that be a fit for Detroit? We will discuss that coming up momentarily here on Locked On Lions. We've got a call of the day as well at the end of the show today. If you want to be a call of the day and have your voicemail played on the show, just go to speakpipe.com/Derry podcast page and leave your voicemail there. We got a little combine news that's going to start this weekend. On Sunday, we'll give you a little bit of the schedule and more chatter about Myles Garrett coming to Detroit from Daniel Jeremiah at the NFL Network. Hope everybody's having a good day. It's a little bit warmer out there today. A little Friday edition of Locked On Lions. Got a big Michigan State game tonight down at Chrysler. I'm heading down to Ann Arbor. Not going to go to the game, but going to go down there and see some peeps. So should be a good time. But thanks to Damon Mendelara, by the way, from Mad Dog Sports Radio, the DA show with Babchick every morning. He joined the show yesterday. If you missed the show, go back and check it out. It's interesting. Everybody's talking about Myles Garrett to Detroit, and everybody knows that the Lions would love to add another edge rusher to go with Aiden Hutchinson and Zadarius Smith and Josh Pascal and those guys. It's a weak spot on a very, very stacked roster. This is a team that won 15 football games this past year. All right. Sky's not falling. They just know. Everybody knows the Lions could use more help in rushing the quarterback. We've heard Myles Garrett's name to Detroit. People for the last 2 years have talked about, edge rushers galore coming to the Lions, whether it's, Max Crosby, that's the name I was looking for, whether it's Trey Hendrickson. A lot of different names have been thrown out there as options for the Lions to make a trade or pick up or whatever, right? We've heard those names ad nauseum. One name we have not talked about and have not heard at all discussed is Joey Bosa. Reports started trickling out this week from Dan Graziano at ESPN that Joey Bosa is likely going to be released by the LA Chargers for salary cap purposes. Now, again, the Chargers could release him so they don't have to pay him his $12 million bonus that he's due in March, and also so they can get out from underneath a contract that is set to pay him $25 million this coming season. You never know with how teams want to handle this. But there's a lot of reports out there that Joey Bosa could be had by other teams. I've seen Rams could be a possibility where he stays in LA. Could Joey Bosa be going to the Tampa Bay Bucks? Apparently, there's former Bucks that want him on that team that have publicly said, go get Joey Bosa. But what about the Lions? How come the Lions name has not been connected with the former Ohio State Buckeye, 29 years old, that can rush the passer? And so I was kind of thinking about it a little bit, and I thought maybe the reason the Lions name has not come up, and again, this is a relatively new story that the Chargers could cut him. But number one, Joey Bosa has been in the NFL for 9 years. He has played a full season 3 of the 9 years. So for you math majors out there, 33% of the time is only when Joey Bosa has played a full season. All right. For 6 of the 9 years, he's missed time. He has been injury prone, to say the least. He is going to turn 30 years old this offseason. And do you want to be paying a 30-year-old that is not as good as Myles Garrett, by the way, and upwards of $20 million a year? Now, again, As we know with the rules, Joey Bosa's contract for this year is $25 million. But if the Chargers get out from underneath that and release him, he can sign for whatever he wants. He can try to get $25 million from the next team. He could try to sign a 1-year deal for 20. He could, you never know. All right. He had just 5 sacks this year in 14 games. So he only missed 3 games this year for the Chargers, but only 5 sacks. He did not have the kind of season that he normally has, coming from that edge spot with LA. And remember, the Chargers defense this year, under Jesse Minter, the former Michigan defensive coordinator, was actually very good. And he played with Khalil Mack, who was also a free agent. Or Khalil Mack will be a free agent. Bosa isn't yet, but it sounds like the Chargers are going to release him. So a couple of things at play here. Number 1 is money. Number 2 is health. And number 3, does he fit what Detroit is trying to do? Myles Garrett is a bigger body, a better player than Joey Bosa is. Bosa, as we know, is kind of this just rush the passer, third down type of guy now. He used to be an every down player. This past season, he did not play every down for LA. There's been talk over the last couple of years that his capabilities against the run have declined. He's still one of the better edge rushers in the game, but are the Lions willing to pony up $17, $18, $19 million a year for a declining player that's turning 30? Myles Garrett is turning 30. He's not declining. And if you trade for Myles Garrett, you inherit the last 2 years of his deal, which are not that expensive. But he's going to want more money, and he may hold out. Myles Garrett might, for whatever team picks him up, and say, look, I'm coming. I know I demanded a trade, but I also want a new contract. I would say yes to Joey Bosa, but it's got to be a 1 or 2 year deal, and I'm not paying him $20 million a year. I'm just not. But again, that is after you've exhausted whether or not you'd be in the Myles Garrett sweepstakes or not. As far as what Joey Bosa does in the locker room, I only know Joey Bosa from some of his political leanings, but other than that, it sounds like he's been a pretty good teammate. He just doesn't stay healthy. And this year he was healthy enough to play in 14 games, yet he only sacked the quarterback 5 times. I'm willing to look at everything because this team needs to get to the quarterback. Jaden Daniels in the last game of the year, where the Lions lost in the playoff game to the Commanders, had too much time to throw. Aiden Hutchinson likely won't be 100% to start the year. He's not going to be the same player he was before he broke his fibula and tibia. It's going to take some time. I think Hutch can get to be that player and can be even better once he's healthy. But this is an injury that's going to take some time. And I know we're only in February, and look, Hutch will tell you, put me out there in the preseason. I'm ready to play. Put me out there in some of these joint practices. I'll be ready. But you just don't know. And so is it a little bit of a risk or a gamble to go get a guy like Joey Bosa, who, by the way, also has been linked to the Bears? You know, the Bears are going to be looking at him. But the Bears just signed Montez Sweat to a pretty big contract, and he this year underachieved. I would take a look at Joey Bosa, but I'm not doing backflips, and I'm not going to give him anything more than a 1 or 2 year deal, and I'm not paying him $20 million a year. I know he's scheduled to make 25 this year, but he's a little bit of a decline. But on this team right now with this roster and who they have at edge rusher, yes, he would be an upgrade. So keep an eye on that. I wonder if the Lions would dive in on that. First things first, the Chargers have to release him, I believe, before March 10th in order to get out from underneath a $12 million bonus a roster bonus that he is owed. And then he'll go into the open market. And who knows? If Khalil Mack leaves the Chargers, maybe San Diego, LA re-signs Bosa for less money and he stays out there. Because that's a team that's certainly on the rise, and that coaching staff led by Jim Harbaugh does a really good job. And a lot of players that are in LA like to stay in LA for a lot of different reasons. All right, coming up next, got a little combine news for you. It starts this weekend with some linemen reporting to Indianapolis on Sunday. We'll tell you about the schedule. Coming up next right here on Locked On Lions. And Locked On Lions today brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. The NBA is back. Pistons and Spurs tonight down in San Antonio. You want to get on the action, there's no better place than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you missed the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. If you're looking for a bigger payout as well, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. All right. If you love using FanDuel's live betting feature, because why not? Of course you do. But it keeps you into every moment of the game and it keeps it exciting. Whether you're backing your team for a late game rally or you pick a player to hit a clutch three, which you can do with player props. All right. Never feel like you missed a chance. Plus, the app is easy to use. And when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Speaking of the NBA, by the way, boy, the league is getting a lot of flack, certainly, for All-Star Weekend and everything that took place. And at the same time, the NHL was doing its Four Nations tournament, and man, it was phenomenal last night. If you watched Team Canada knock off the United States 3-2 in overtime, Canada wins. You know, the Canadian fans are going crazy because they love the sport, and they're saying it's our sport, it's always our sport, and there's a rivalry in hockey with USA and Canada. I found that to be absolutely compelling. I stayed up to watch the ceremony where they played "O Canada," which, by the way, is an incredible anthem. They raised the flag. I just thought it was awesome. So sucks for a guy like Dylan Larkin, certainly in the American team, but that was great theater last night. And hopefully the NHL can build off of that because they gained a lot of hockey fans last night with what took place up in Boston. And by the way, Sean McDonough for ESPN, and Sean's a friend, we've had him on the show, was awesome, just amazing and tremendous. All right, Combine is coming up Sunday, the beginning of the Combine season, as we like to say, SZN. As yes, the Combine is starting on Sunday. Here's the schedule. First and foremost, this was courtesy of Ryan Fowler at the Draft Network. First and foremost, on Tuesday, Brad Holmes will address the media at 1 Eastern, and Dan Campbell will have a press conference at 3:30 on Tuesday. So both the general manager and the head coach will be taking questions from the media on those days. As far as the Combine schedule goes, starting on Sunday, kickers, defensive linemen, and linebackers will report to Indianapolis. Then on Monday, defensive backs and tight ends will be there. By Tuesday, the running backs, quarterbacks, and wide receivers. And then Wednesday through next Monday, offensive linemen will report, do interviews, do workouts, and everything else. All right. So the big day, I'm trying to look for, everybody loves watching the quarterbacks. Quarterbacks will work out. Let's see. It looks like the quarterbacks will be out there on field workouts next Saturday, which of course they want to put on television, which is a smart move. So, but for example, like defensive linemen and linebackers and kickers report on Sunday, then Monday through Friday, they're there with interviews, measurements, workouts, studying, all of these things. So Combine coming up in Indy next week. We will certainly dive deep into some of the players that are working out there. I'm going to keep my eye on the defensive linemen, certainly the edge rushers, the interior linemen, offensive line, cornerback. Heck, if the Lions lose Tim Patrick in free agency, they're going to need another wide receiver. So always fun. We'll check in next week with some folks in Indy, get some guests on for you next week right here on Locked On Lions. Speaking of the Combine, Daniel Jeremiah, who of course is one of the draft experts at NFL.com and the NFL Network, and also does the Chargers games on the radio. He did a media conference call yesterday and was asked about the Lions and Myles Garrett. Quote from Jeremiah, "I'd be willing to be pretty aggressive. I think if I were Brad Holmes on that front, knowing that could bring a parade to my city, I would be aggressive and do whatever I had to do, try and make something like that happen. Of course, Myles Garrett was a defensive player of the year in the NFL last year, 2023, Pro Bowler, All Pro four times, and everything else. And he has been connected to the Lions for weeks. We've talked about it, blah, 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 on this show. Now, Jeremiah also said that he doubts that the Browns are going to trade him, despite the fact that Myles Garrett has told the team he wants out. Quote from Jeremiah, "We just have to see if it's a legit possibility. Everything and talking to people around the league, the expectation is, nah, they're not going to move him. He's not going to go anywhere. So we'll see what happens." End quote. Dave Burkett in the Free Press today talked about it. We mentioned this before. If the Lions can't get Myles Garrett, Max Crosby, to me, if I'm Pete Carroll and I'm 75 years old or whatever he is, why would you trade Max Crosby? Micah Parsons is intriguing because certainly could Dallas move off of him. We talked about Trey Hendrickson, and we referenced Joey Bosa earlier as somebody that you wouldn't have to trade for if the Chargers get rid of him. Daniel Jeremiah went on to say that in his initial top 50 prospect list, he had 7 edge rushers and 4 interior defensive linemen in his top 28. So 11 of the first 28 players that he believes are the best players on the board are at positions of need for the Lions, which would be interior defensive linemen and edge rushers. Of course, the Lions draft number 28 in the first round. We've talked about some options for the Lions, whether it's Mike Green, whether it's Shamar from Marshall, Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M. There's going to be some pretty Jack Sawyer from Ohio State. There are going to be some pretty good players at number 28. As far as Shamar Stewart goes to the Lions, Jeremiah said, quote, "raw as can be, but man, there's a lot to work with." And I think a big question for a lot of people around the league is, and NFL people is Shamar Stewart going to be a guy that is there at number 28? People love him. But here's the thing. This Myles Garrett talk, it just won't go away. It's not going to go away until the Browns make that move. And for the Lions, we've mentioned this all week. All right. Brad Holmes loves the draft. Brad Holmes told Channel 4 he loves the draft. Brad Holmes covets these draft picks. And I think he covets the way the team is being built, which is they're not going to sink a ton of money into outside players coming in here, and especially guys that are in their 30s. I would make the exception for Garrett because, folks, I'm telling you, he's that good. Joey Bosa is a really good edge rusher. Joey Bosa could be a guy that could get to the quarterback, but he's not the NFL Defensive Player of the Year caliber. He's not that caliber. He was years ago, but he's not. He doesn't stay healthy. Garrett's a game changer. He just is. But the question's going to be for Brad Holmes is, are you going to part with a couple of number 1 picks to get him? And then you got to sign him. You got to get that agreement in place. And then how much of that money then, and I know the salary cap's going up $22 million this year, but can you afford the rest of the guys on your team if you take on a contract like Myles Garrett? Or do you believe you can draft somebody at 28 that eventually could be the next Garrett? Easier said than done. This guy's a freak. He is a freak of nature. And here's Daniel Jeremiah, whom I respect immensely, saying, if you're Brad Holmes, you got to go for it. You want that parade in Detroit. But there's a certain way that Brad has built this team, and it's worked. Have they gotten the Super Bowl yet? No. We had a parade yet? We have not. Was this year's ending to the season disappointing? Certainly it was. But, when push comes to shove, I still don't think Holmes is going to do it. Would I love to see him gamble and make that move? I would. And by the way, I've mentioned this a couple of times on the show, and I heard from our Harbor Springs insider who listens daily to the podcast about Hendon Hooker and how there have been certain trade rumors and things thrown in the trade machine and reports about, well, if the Browns are going to trade Garrett to the Lions, they would want Hooker so they could take a look at him to be their future quarterback. The Browns have no quarterback. And there's been a lot of Lions fans that say, we love Hendon Hooker. You can't trade the future. Hold on a second here. Hendon Hooker was the backup quarterback for like the first 13, 14 weeks of the season. Then what happened? The Lions went into the playoffs and said, can we upgrade at that spot just in case something happens to Jared Goff? And the answer was yes. The Lions plucked Teddy Bridgewater out of retirement, out of Florida, where he was done coaching high school football, at least for that year. And they brought him up, and he played in the Washington game. He played in the playoff game for a series when Goff had his bell rung. So all of you fans out there that go, the Lions aren't going to trade Hendon Hooker. The guy got demoted at the end of the season. And I still like Hendon. I think he'll be all right, but they've got Jared Goff here for now and way into the future. So if a team is valuing a guy like Hooker a lot more than the Lions do, because the Lions have a starting quarterback, the Lions would put him in the deal. Trust me on that. All right, we're going to do our call of the day. We're going to do that coming up next right here on Locked On Lions. And real fast, I want to remind you that Locked On Pistons is with you with Koo, who does a great job on that show. Locked On Red Wings with B Fish, and of course, Locked On Tigers with Scotty Bentley. Get all of your teams right here daily on the Locked On Podcast Network. I appreciate all of you that check out Locked On Lions. Some of you, though, like the other teams in town. Some of you just like the Lions. Maybe you're a Michigan fan. Locked On Wolverines, Locked On Spartans. It's all there for you right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And of course, check out Locked On NFL Draft as well, wherever you get your podcasts. All right, so it is time to do our call of the day. If you want to be our call of the day, go to www.speakpipe.com/dairy podcast page. That is speakpipe.com/dairy podcast page. And you too can be our call of the day. Our man, Rick Balderaz. Rick has checked in before, has a good call today as he is down in Texas. Let's hear from Rick. He is our call of the day.
Morning, Derry. This is Rick Balderaz out of Houston, Texas. It's currently 4:30 on Saturday morning. I'm driving into work. Had a thought pop up in my head, so I thought I'd throw it your way, see what you feel. But I follow Lions fan pages all over social media platforms. And lately, the comments and the posts that I read are all pretty negative in terms of our 15-2, 15-3 season. They're saying it's a disaster. We didn't make it to the Super Bowl. Defense was atrocious. All the coaches are leaving. The world's on fire, whatever. What I want to know is what happened to the fans who were happy when we won our first game with Dan Campbell, or we kept the Packers from going to the playoffs. The fans that were appreciative of seasons that we were actually having a winning record. I might just be seeing bandwagon fans, and that's fine. They can get off, but I'm just, 15-2, 15-3. Our season last year was amazing. What do you think?
All right, Rick, thank you very much for your phone call. Again, you want to be our call today, go to speakpipe.com/dairy podcast page. We might play your call on the show. We appreciate all of you listening that check out the show and participate. Rick brings up a very good point, and he said he scours through the Lions fan pages, whether it's on Facebook or any of the other pages that come up on social media. And there's a lot of great fan pages and fans that want to interact with other fans. Here's the thing. We've had a lot of success here now going on 2+ years. I mean, you go back to the 2022 season, second year under Dan Campbell. I mean, this team ended the year with a winning record, beat Green Bay, ended Aaron Rodgers' career in Green Bay, and So people started to get spoiled. And this is what happens when you win. You get spoiled. And the expectation this year was to get to the Super Bowl. And the Lions lost a playoff game. They didn't even win a playoff game. They didn't even get to the game before the Super Bowl. All right. And so then people get mad and they get angry because we've raised the bar in this town. And when you do not clear said bar, right, sometimes buffoonery sets in and fans get angry. And I'm not going to tell fans how to feel at all. I do want to tell fans that my opinion, looking at this roster, is that you've got a really good football team. And if this club could keep a couple of their free agents around, sign some others that can come in and fill some holes, have a good draft like Brad Holmes has basically had every year. This past year's draft was not great, but I think Terrion Arnold's going to be really good. I think Mekhi Wingo is going to be really good. I think Christian Mahogany is going to be really good. All right. Jury is still out on the likes of Manu and Vaki and Ennis Rakestraw. I just don't know. All right. But I think there's some good young pieces there. We know how good the drafts have been in years prior. All right. There's a lot of good young talent here. This is not an aging team. This is not a team that has guys 33, 34, 35 that you worry about. And so just keep the faith. I truly believe that this is going to be an excellent squad. Again, I don't know about the new assistant coaches. I am concerned about John Morton. I didn't love that hire. He failed the first time around when he was an offensive coordinator in this league, and it wasn't pretty. Now, again, it was the Jets, so a lot of failures come out of the green and white there. Jets, Jets. So I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. But I'm with Rick. I'm excited for this year, and I think fans being angry or whatever and jumping off the bandwagon, that's going to happen. But I think for the most part, this fan base is still hopped up and excited. All right, great week this week here on Locked On Lions. Next week, we talk Combine. What are some of these players saying about their conversations with the Lions? What are Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell saying about what they're looking at in Indianapolis? All of that next week right here on LO Lions. Have a great weekend, everybody.